Top 10. When war becomes absurd. Throughout history, wars have typically been marked by profound conflicts and serious causes, but there are several remarkable exceptions. We've delved into the strange chronicles and uncovered the 10 most absurd wars ever fought. Triggered by everything from stolen buckets to football matches, these wars demonstrate just how bizarre human conflict can become. Join us as we explore these incredible stories, where the unexpected and the absurd take center stage on the world scene. History's most absurd wars. 10. The 335-Year War, 1651 to 1986. Perhaps no other war in history spans such a time frame as the 335-Year War, a conflict that accidentally remained unresolved for centuries between the Netherlands and the Scilly Isles. Originally, the war arose during the Second English Civil War, when Dutch forces allied with the parliamentarians declared war against the Scilly Isles, which were a royalist stronghold at the time. However, after the royalists' defeat, the Netherlands forgot to withdraw their declaration of war, thus technically leaving the war active. It was not until 1986, when historian Roy Duncan stumbled upon this forgetfulness, that a peace treaty was finally signed in a ceremonial session on the Scilly Isles, with blank shots fired as a humorous echo from the past. 9. The Football War, 1969. This war between El Salvador and Honduras is a perfect example of how sports can uncover deeper social and political rifts. It arose following a heated World Cup qualifying match in 1970. The game, which culminated in violence on and off the field, acted as the catalyst that ignited already existing tensions over immigration and land reform. Although the military operations lasted only 4 days, the conflict left deep scars between the nations, which took 10 years to heal. 8. The Aroostook War, 1838 to 1839. Also known as the Lumberjack War. This conflict was triggered by a dispute over the right to log timber in the disputed Aroostook area on the border between Maine, USA, and New Brunswick, Canada, then part of the British Empire. Militia and regular troops were mobilized, but the conflict largely remained a series of sharp words and patrolling without actual combat. It was resolved through diplomatic means with the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, which set the boundaries and ended the dispute. 7. The Paraguayan War, 1864 to 1870. President Francisco Solano López of Paraguay, whose ambitions exceeded his country's military capacity, ignited this devastating war by invading neighboring Brazil, which then formed an alliance with Argentina and Uruguay. The war was catastrophic for Paraguay, which lost a large portion of its male population and extensive territory. López died in battle, and the war ended with Paraguay financially and demographically devastated. 6. The Anglo-American War, 1812 to 1815. Despite its name, the War of 1812 was more marked by complications and misunderstandings than most other conflicts. It began with British trade restrictions and the impressment of American sailors. But by the time Britain repealed these restrictions, the news had not yet reached America, and a war was triggered. The war included several famous battles, and ironically, brought no major territorial changes, but strengthened the USA's national identity. 5. The Stray Dog War, 1925. A seemingly trivial incident led to a deadly confrontation between Greece and Bulgaria. A Greek soldier crossed the border to retrieve his dog and was shot by Bulgarian guards. Greece responded with an invasion which was quickly met with international calls for a ceasefire. The conflict, which cost around 50 lives, was resolved through diplomacy under the supervision of the League of Nations, which ordered Bulgaria to pay compensation to Greece. 4. The War of the Oaken Bucket, 1325. This petty war between the Italian city-states of Bologna and Modena started over an oaken bucket, stolen from a well in Bologna by Modenese soldiers. The conflict escalated into open warfare and cost about 2,000 lives before peace was restored. The oaken bucket, at the center of this dispute, is still preserved in Modena, a continual reminder of the city's victory. 3. The Anglo-Zanzibar War, 1896. This war, which lasted less than an hour, arose after a succession crisis in Zanzibar. Britain, wishing to secure a pro-British sultan on the throne, bombarded the royal palace after the incumbent, Sultan, refused to abdicate. The fighting lasted only 38 minutes, and the result was a British-supported regime in Zanzibar, one of the shortest and most one-sided military confrontations in history. 2. The War of the Golden Stool, 1900. This conflict broke out when a British officer, Frederick Hodgson, demanded to sit on the sacred golden stool during a ceremony in Kumasi, the capital of the Ashanti Empire. This was a huge insult to the Ashanti people, who responded by surrounding and besieging the British in the fort. The war ended with a British victory, but the Ashanti people retained a form of autonomy and continued to resist colonial dominance. 1. The Pig War, 1859 to 1872. This lesser-known conflict between the USA and Britain on the San Juan Islands was triggered by a Canadian pig grazing on American land and being shot by an American farmer. This led to an escalation with both nations sending troops to the islands. Despite the tense situation, the war was remarkable for its absence of bloodshed and was eventually resolved through amicable diplomacy, with the islands being awarded to the USA.